Boys, welcome. We haven't got all night, but welcome. Thanks for being here. Thank you, George, Joel, Scott, looking somewhere sunny by the looks of your attire, and Ed. Ed's already frozen. Thanks, Ed. Hey, a couple of stories to go through. We're going to jump straight into the to something that's just come through we've noticed, but we will go through. Look, this is an ABC story. The company associated with the Batuta Advocate contracted to run Mr. Albanese's PM podcast schedule, which is interesting. We're going to look at the compulsory national superannuation scheme, few things moving around that. The rental disaster, really. The Ray White guys basically saying we could see hikes of up to 30% in rental increase, something that Jim Chalmers didn't account for, but they're denying it. The One Nation staffer that was attacked at Ekka, we'll touch on that, political violence, a few other things. Edward's also going to give us an update on what's happening with Ben Carroll versus the Red Unions. But let's quickly jump into the ASIO bill that we've been talking about for a few weeks now, and everyone's kind of knows what's going on with it, has apparently just passed. I'll bring it up on the screen. First thoughts, Scott, have you just saw the X post? And I'll bring it up on the screen for you as well, Scott.
First thoughts, obviously not good. Passed through the upper house for the majority Labor vote, and there was a bunch of abstaining and absentee voters as well. Good to see One Nation hold the line there. Look, not good at all. Joel's probably got a bit more insight with regards to the actual legislation itself, because I know he's way more across the intricacies of these type of things. But now we're all in a position where almost everyone can be labelled and branded and coerced, and you don't even really have any legal protections anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Joel, I'll come to you and get what just maybe remind everyone what this bill was about, some of the disastrous parts of it, i.e., they could come for our wives and not tell us. They could, there's so much in there that's really dangerous. Give the listeners, Joel, a bit of an update on what the bill was exactly. And now that it's passed, we'll also go through who voted in what way.
Yeah, this bill's a real shocker. I mean, the ASIO bill was basically going to expand their powers under the excuse of the Bondi terrorist attack, which is terrible. They're using this as an excuse. But the ASIO bill was basically going to allow them to bring anyone they wanted into questioning and be able to strip them of their legal protections. For example, if you come in and your legal counsel that you're allowed to have in the room, and it's your right, they can send your legal counsel out of the room if they're seen as obstructing the questions or whatever. You're not allowed to not answer as well, which takes another way of you protecting yourself and not incriminating yourself unknowingly in there as well. And some people, they make mistakes in these things under pressure. They don't handle pressure well. You're not allowed to tell anyone you've been brought in for questioning. So you're not allowed to have your legal counsel in there if they tell them to leave. You're not allowed to not answer questions, and you're not allowed to tell anyone you've been brought in. They have the right to bring anyone in your family or in your political or business circle in for questioning, and they're not allowed to tell you. Otherwise, they could be jailed for 5 years. And on top of that, if you can't go out online and tell people that you're being brought in for questioning and they're trying to prosecute you and whatever, how do you raise funds? So they could bring Big Chocky in and they could basically mean he couldn't tell us. Otherwise, he's going to go to jail for 5 years. And he couldn't fundraise, we couldn't support him and whatever. So this is going to be a really phenomenal tool for the government to censor, especially online podcasters and the little guys out there that don't have the connections that we have. And so, look, I don't know if all of these elements went through. I don't know what the amendments were. I haven't been following the debate today. I've been tied up with other things. But that was the last version of the bill I saw. And it's one of those bills where there's these strange alliances between the Greens and the right-wingers that are saying, no, we don't want this. The Greens don't want it because they don't want Palestine protesters being brought in and people that are very close to some terrorists. But they do have a bone in them that is for civil liberties sometimes. And with us, we're just consistent with our values. We actually don't want to see this happen. And I think that any MP that voted for this bill seriously has to be cross-examined. We know One Nation voted against it. We know Senator Antic was the only Liberal that voted against it. Matt Canavan, I don't know if he got lost in the Parliament, but he didn't turn up and vote either side, which is a real shame. But these are the bills we expect any senator that represents us as conservatives and Christians to vote against. And if they don't, we'll hold it against them.
George, I'm going to come to you. I want to just touch on as well, George, if you could, maybe talk a bit. What's the go with people not turning up to vote in such an incredibly important bill. You've got most of the coalition, the Liberal and National senators missing, some Labor senators, they've already got some people there, and other crossbench senators not showing up. What possible reason could you be to not be there for a vote like this?
We'll talk about feeding conspiracy. If they wanted to feed conspiracy, it's the best way to do it. You know, this is a terrible thing that happened at Bondi, and in typical fashion, the Australian government is using it as a way to implement more control over its people. And then you've got people there sitting there who are contrarians going, what is this about? You're supposed to be protecting us, not enslaving us. And that's what's happening. The government of Australia is slowly enslaving us, checkpoint at a time, one legislation at a time. And this ASIO bill is a complete disgrace to human rights in terms of our freedom of speech and what we can get up to. We're moving towards a future where AI data centers will be pushed in Australia. We're moving to a future where drones are becoming more sophisticated. We're moving to a future where you might one day in Australia walk outside and have a drone have to follow you. There might be personal drones following you, especially if you're considered a person of high interest, who are there to monitor you at all times, who are there to basically keep an eye on you. It's literally walking into some sort of Big Brother kind of world. So that's what I see. That's why I think the Labor and Liberal Party almost are for this, because it fits the global elite agenda of creating like a universal income, a social credit system, a way to monitor its people. And the truth is the economy is failing. And this means the global economy is failing. The nations of the world are failing. Anglo-Saxon countries are failing. They are gay, they are retarded, they are failing. And this is a serious problem with the world. And
that's your best of George clip.
I was just saying this today, that it seems like Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Celtic white countries are addicted to the mythical story of Phoenix. They love the idea of creating this amazing civilization and then self-destructing themselves and then rising from the ashes. I guess my question is to the people of Australia, are we going to rise to the ashes, or are we going to lose something forever? Because sometimes we can rise, like the fall of the Roman Empire, you had the rise of the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, you had the fall of the Byzantine Empire, but that didn't really fall into anything. That led to 400 years of enslavement by the Islamic rule of the Ottomans, and the fall of Constantinople, and the destruction of the greatest church the ancient Christians have ever seen. In Australia, are we moving towards a future where we're seeing a sort of South Africa 2.0? And why is that important? If there is a slow destruction of this country, then the only way they can shut down us from saving this country is to shut down our voices. So this ASIO bill is a direct attack on us trying to make a difference, trying to communicate to the people of Australia, to the Anglo-Celtic, to the Anglo-Saxon people of Australia. Wake up, they're killing your people, they're destroying your country, and they don't like your race. They hate you.
Ed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Echoing it, it's part of this massive movement across the country, across the political class, which is disenfranchising regular people of their civil liberties. We've seen it as one of the it's the cornerstone of really the response to the Bondi terror attack. This is one of those as well. But what happened earlier in January with the hate speech laws, it's essentially the government and the ruling class, it seems to be pretty bipartisan a lot of the time, are happy to take away the rights of the working people, to basically bolster that establishment and to, I guess, make them above reproach. And it's unquestionable the powers that they have now. So it's probably a symptom of our she'll be right attitude as Australians. We don't really get as rah-rah as the Americans do about civil liberties and freedom and whatnot. And this is the result of that. We don't have a Bill of Rights. We don't have this sort of sacred protection of the core liberties that that are required for a functional democracy, and that's why we're getting further and further away from democracy. I mean, how is it democratic if you don't have democratic rights if the intelligence agency of the day can take away all of those rights from you and at the direction of a political party, at the direction of the government? They like to say they're independent, but they're obviously quite influenced by it. And then you don't really have a democracy if your country's getting flooded by people who are going to vote a certain way and are going to vote on racial or sectarian lines. So at every aspect, at the moment, it seems, particularly since Bondi, it's just been used as an auspice to take away the civil liberties of Australians. And it's quite transparent, but it's a great shame to see so many in the political class that you would have hoped would stand against this stuff, really siding with the establishment. And that has to be remembered when we get to the ballot box, and it has to be remembered day to day in what we're fighting for. We're not on the same team as these people in the establishment who are voting these in this way. We're not on the same team with the people that voted for the hate speech bill to pass at the start of this year. They are political enemies of ours, and ultimately they are part of the reason that our civilization is continuing to decline, and we as the Australian people are losing more and more rights and losing more and more of a voice in our own country. And it's not a democracy anymore. You've seen what's happened with freedom of association. You've seen what's happened with freedom of speech, and now with basic rights as it pertains to being interviewed by law enforcement. And this is, it's a sad state for our country, and there's and there's going to be widespread ramifications of this.
I'll ask the viewers too, maybe put in your comments what you think, but I want to ask you, Scotty, because you travel around the country a fair bit, and the world, I might add. Very busy lately, by the way, but when you are trying to save the country, you're around all over the place talking to most people, and the general consensus around the country is we're broken. It seems like the majority of people want to see a change. And when I see a bill like this, and I'm asking the people watching, put in the comments, what do you think the reason is this goes through? Because one of you touched on it before about, look, the majors seem to be in lockstep here. And I think it's because they clearly know they're losing control. They are losing control. The fact that, your miners or your One Nation now as well who have gone against it, yes, we would like to think they're on our side. But at the same time, the majors kind of really being in lockstep here, which it pretty much looks like. I mean, half of them didn't turn up because they didn't know how to save brand or save face if they were present. But it looks like we are losing control, and all we can do now is tape up everyone's mouth or put the fear of God on them, that if they have a podcast like this, or if they want to be like Chocky or Sam Bamford or any of you guys on screen, really, if you want to have a say, just remember we might pull you in and you can't tell anyone, and you're being threatened with 5 years jail. Scotty.
Well, nothing clearly exemplifies the fact that you're living under a totalitarian regime than when they act like totalitarians. Right? This is what you get. And so the duopoly that we are managed by, the managerial duopoly, the idea that we have a left and a right and a diversity of ideas in this country doesn't exist, because this is the regime is one. They're the same thing. And this is what happens in countries that are trying to lock down their citizens to make sure they have as much control as possible. The multicultural soup experiment will continue here. They're going to keep shoving red ants into the black ants jar as quickly as they possibly can, or vice versa. And they're going to keep shaking that thing up. And the best thing they can do is have a raft of rules and laws in place. And they'll say that if you've got nothing to fear, then you've got nothing. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. But we all know that's some pretty Orwellian stuff that we're staring down the barrel of. This version of dystopia wasn't exactly on my radar 20 years ago, and I'd read all the dystopian novels about what this could look like in the future. And this one's a particularly unique model. We have to keep pushing, but at the end of the day, we're going to see good people go down. This will take some of us out. It will happen with time. But the rest of us have to keep pushing and holding the line. Now we're in for some tough times here, guys. This is going to be extraordinary. I also look at legislation like this and know that this is the dying days of the regime. When they have to resort to this, they're really starting to lose control. And that also segues into the fact that we just found out that the Albanese government spent $2.2 billion on its own special interest advocacies, in the last electoral cycle as well. So there's plenty going on out there to try and control the narrative, control the message, and control you.
I agree. Here. Well, let's go straight to it. Company associated with Batuta Advocate contracted to run the PM's re-election podcast strategy. I don't know what that would look like. I'm guessing it's not going to be playing the games he played in the last one, talking about Colin. No, let's have a quick look. Let's talk about the Batuta Advocate for a minute, because they were funny at the start, years ago. They were funny. There was some funny stuff on there at the start. But now they are, I mean, they're pretty woke, pretty left, it's pretty clear they're just a political organisation. Who would like to go first and share their opening thoughts about the Batuta Advocate? But then also, Joel, we'll go you first. After that, let's talk about this funding that's actually coming. I believe it's tax dollars, right? And now it's going to this. So go ahead, Joel.
Look, so the article's from 2025. So this is the successful campaign that got Albanese elected. The Batuta Advocate, they're a part of they arranged for a whole chain of podcasts for the Prime Minister to go on. I think it was around about 50 or so, whereas Peter Dutton went on maybe 3. These guys did a very, very good job. They learned from the failings of Kamala Harris and versus Trump, and they basically put him on every podcast. And he was on Abby Chatfield. He was on all the biggest podcasters that were out there, even our mates, at the various podcasts on the sort of center rather than the left. He went everywhere, and he worked very hard getting on these podcasts and reaching new mediums and learning from the failings of the Democrats in the US. And that was the result. And so the Batuta Advocate, they did a very good job running that. And, people on the right, that they're not even thinking that way. They're not even thinking that way. There was no engagement during the election. They weren't engaging the best right-wing accounts. I don't even think they engaged at the time Avi, who was one of the biggest ones at the time. And they definitely didn't engage people like my cousin John Bernard, who's a comedian, who would have been great value for Peter Dutton, helped soften his image a bit. But no. I was really shocked to see how poor the Liberal Party did in alternative media in 2025, especially after the Trump presidency and the lessons from that election. So the Batuta Advocate, very well connected. They used to be really great, middle of the road, just sort of Aussie, classic Aussie humor. But I don't know, over time they got a bit woke.
George, what happened with them? You would have watched them when they first came on the scene. You've been around a long time before them. What have you seen happen with them?
Look, it's just the nature of the social media business. I mean, you could make an argument the Adelaide Set was the same thing. The Adelaide Set started off as a platform that was there to support small businesses and, showcase the best bar and the best, restaurant in town. And then eventually pop comes the weasel. George Mamalis comes out of it and he's talking about deporting 2 million Indians. So that's just the way things go sometimes. So it's the same with Batuta Advocate. At the end of the day, these people who run these platforms, they have political views. And eventually when they reach a certain mass of following, they want to reveal their true intentions to the world. And I see that happening with not just Batuta Advocate, but many other platforms that, want to become political. Because being political now is the new social media glue. It's the new cool thing to do. It's a new algorithm. Like when you jump on social media now, it's like you're jumping on Fox News. It's not where before when I first started, social media was like, you might show your cat or you might show your drunk friend who fell over, or you might show your neighbor's dog's, cat's, sister's pool party. It's just random stuff like that. And now it's quickly evolved into a political goy slop session. So, I mean, social media has evolved so much, and now you have the usage of bots and the bot farms from all across Eastern Europe and China and other places. It feels like social media has just turned into a sort of channel to mind control the people of this world. And, I had a chat today, my podcast with Sam Bamford, I said if I could press a button and destroy social media, I'd press it in a second. And I still stand by that statement. His argument was, social media is good because it helps us people know the truth more. But, if I look back at human history, humans have always been kind of switched on. And, people think technology is the big reason why humans have woken up. No, the reason humans are awake is because we have something called intuition. You have the inner spirit. You have the voice of God, the voice of Christ, the voice of angels speaking to you if you want to listen. And they will guide you through tough times. You don't need social media to do that. And you didn't need social media to realize that this mRNA vaccine experiment was an absolute shithole of an experiment. It just was common sense. So I believe in common sense. And I believe that the human spirit is more powerful than any technology. And it's just kind of sad. So yeah, look, am I surprised by the Batuta Advocate? No. It's just kind of what happens in social media these days.
Hey, just on that, do you guys think that social media really has, it would be my view that negativity and brainwashing and propaganda spread far more effectively than positive and truth does on social media, normally because there's big money behind the propaganda and the brainwashing. and the psyops than there is of people trying to get truth out there. What your thoughts on that, Joel?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want to compare the time we're in right now to a time in history, it's when the Gutenberg printing press was invented around the time of Martin Luther, who challenged the Catholic Church in Germany at the time. I think it was like 1500s, 1512 or something. But the Gutenberg printing press, when it basically came out, it allowed people to print things without basically having to hand scribe them on scrolls. This is how books sort of came about. And at the time, not only were they able to challenge the zeitgeist in the Catholic Church, who obviously Latin was the dominant language, so the peasants couldn't read or listen and understand what the priests were saying. So it was a mode of control. But also with the explosion of the books, they were able to be printed in German, in English, in other languages. So too did we see the explosion of witchcraft and other things where the printing presses exploded around the world. And so that is probably the only similar time to this technological advancement. So yeah, you'll have, let's say, misinformation or even witchcraft or even whatever get out there, but it creates a natural market. But I do somewhat agree with George. I mean, to an extent, you do have, therefore, a vector that you can use to control the masses that's a bit more centralized. But yeah, it's an interesting discussion.
Just in regards to social media, everything you've said, every single text you've ever sent, Instagram is copying everything you've ever texted on your phone every 20 seconds and sending it to their databases. Every single thing, every single voice memo, everything is being captured and put into super AI computers. And they're building profiles on all of us slowly. They probably already have profiles on all of us. They know exactly who we are. They know exactly what you like. They know exactly what you do. They know your behaviors. So it's pretty scary stuff, where before they didn't have access to that technology. And if you listen to any of The Art of War, if you listen to any sort of ontological playbooks around propaganda, the best way to defeat your enemy is to know your enemy. So that's why, you have figures saying, oh, okay, say you did want to, save this country, for example, and you wanted to, let's just say the government went full tyrannical and started murdering people in the streets. You as a citizen, what are you going to do? Are you going to go and start a little WhatsApp group and say, oh, guys, we need to band together and stop this tyrannical government? No. You'll be instantly shut down. A drone will be sent to your house and you'll be dead within minutes. That's the future we're stepping into. So it's at the point now where it's very scary stuff. We're moving into that sci-fi part of this section of humanity. The next 10 to 20 years is very, very controlled, very, very meticulous, and very, very calculated. So if we're going to do work, and to the people at home, you're listening and going, oh, George, you sound like a defeatist. You sound like a nihilist. I'm not being a nihilist or defeatist. I'm just saying you need to wake up. And you need to know when you keep your mouth shut. And you need to know when you got to talk to your friends in person. You know when to gather around and have community events and not be obvious about what you're doing. There's got to be a level of finesse to the things you're doing back at home. Not everything can be out on the streets. Sometimes you've got to have some secrecy about you. And this is what secret societies did so well. With groups like the Masons and the Knight Templars and all these other secret societies, they knew the importance of secrecy because, well, what happened to the Knight Templars? They got executed by the Pope, right? That's where the idea of Execute 66 from Star Wars came from. They got absolutely massacred because they weren't secret enough and they got found out by the Pope. So, the things we're witnessing now have happened in human history many, many times from many, many different races, from many, many different cultures. So it's just something we have to be aware of, guys. Have your front plans, but have your back end plans. Have your buzz out, what's it called when you bug out? Have your bug out plan. Have a place where you can be safe. Have a place you can protect your family. Have a place where you can talk to your friends, your closest friends, and work out some sort of system together, and just be ready for whatever, because who knows what's going to happen.
It is fun to war game it out. Before we go to the next story, the people watching, put in the comments as well, like I said, but I'll reframe the question. We'll just all give a quick answer. Do you think if there was no social media, would it benefit our side, the good side, or would it benefit the evil side?
Can I just...
Scotty.
Yeah, that's a really good one because I remember 9/11 really well. There was no social media, and we're coming up to the 25th anniversary of 9/11. There was no social media then, and they effectively conned the Western world and a whole bunch of other countries into invading the Middle East and stealing all of Iraq's oil. The forever war hasn't ended. There was no social media to sell the message. The mainstream media did a great job of it. But also remember, some of the largest protests in modern Western history happened to counter that war. There were huge protests. You guys were all young at the time, but I believe there was a million person protest in Australia over that as well, because Australians were not keen on being a part of this. So would social media have made a difference? Either way, we're all being programmed through the channels that the government has available.
Include all media. When I say not just social media, include all media. So take away mainstream, take away your way to receive news. Does it help the good or the bad, Joel?
Yeah, I think if you take away the news, it basically means that people aren't thinking about their locality. They're thinking about the things happening outside of their locality, outside of their control. And I think that can be a net negative in the big scheme of things. It means they're not thinking about their kids and their future and the stuff that actually makes a society great. One of the great things about the British Empire was the fact that they did have a shared sort of culture, which was, obviously before they ended up taking over the world. They had to have that shared culture. They had to have that shared camaraderie, the way they raised their kids, the same faith. It was born in the Christian faith. And that is literally what is important. Now, if you've got the news and you're hearing stuff about what's going on in different areas, sometimes people say, oh, we ought to set that right, this thing on the other side of the world. And unfortunately, I just think there's a lot of interests that want you to do that because they'll make a lot of money off that. But it's actually not in your interest. And it wouldn't be you wouldn't even know about it until it was basically at your doorstep if you didn't have the news. But I don't know. Look, it's at the same time, you don't also want to have your head in the sand and then a big problem shows up and you didn't see it coming. That's why we have signals. So look, the point is it's here to stay. It's here to stay. And unfortunately, as biological creatures, we're still getting used to it. We're still getting used to it. And
very true.
I'd encourage anyone to read the book, What Happened to the Lucky Country, because it does explain some of the biological issues and it cites a lot of case studies as to how it's affected human beings and kids and how it's led to the downfall of Australia technology and it's allowed the universities to just pump out their communist ideology onto Australia and people to seek immediate gratification.
Edward, wargaming out for me, 10 seconds, mate. If there's no social media, no mainstream media, no newspapers, who benefits most, the good or the evil?
I'm not going to give a straight answer. I don't know, but I think we're given the circumstances that we are now. God's sovereign over all still, and we have to do with what's in front of us. We've still got the foundations of an incredible country, and we've got many different challenges. But in saying that, all of the social media, all of the media that we have now, we don't have, the same sort of challenges that were faced 2,000 years ago. So we are still very blessed, and we've got to do well with what's in front of us.
Very good. Next story, One Nation staffer. I don't know if you guys have seen this. They did a very good job of really putting it in the news once and then we heard nothing else, but we'll quickly touch on it. Whether we know the details or not, it's important to talk about the rise in political violence and it always seems to come from one side. One Nation staffer left with broken rib after being attacked at Brisbane's Ekka. I'll read a tiny bit and then I'll come to Joel and then Scotty to see if they know anything about it. A One Nation staffer has allegedly been hospitalised with a broken rib after she was punched and spat on while attempting to ignore a group who called her a racist C-word at Brisbane's Ekka Royal Queensland show last Friday, a party spokesman has said. The grandmother, aged in her 60s, was said to be wearing a One Nation branded clothing when the attack occurred at the state's annual agriculture exhibition. Joel.
Yeah, look, we first heard about this not from the media actually. It's from Drew Pavlo, who got a message from someone at this event. Basically, this woman was manning was walking in the crowd, and this is what someone sent to Drew. They said, "Hi, Drew, just wanted to let you know what happened to a staff member of One Nation at the Ekka on Friday." It must be the big country event. She walked through the crowd in her logo hat and top, the One Nation one. 4 teens, early 20s, I think it was three girls and a guy, started yelling abuse at her, spat on her. Then the male punched her, broke a rib, and she ends up in hospital. She's 63 years old and a small woman. She's now at home resting and in a lot of pain, as you could imagine. I was volunteering on the stall on the Wednesday before, and there was a lot of support from everyone. And look, let's keep this in context here. Last week, we had kids taking school off to protest Pauline, and we saw a lot of incitement and threats towards Pauline and One Nation. And they were threats. They weren't implicit. They were direct threats. And so when we see this sort of behavior being allowed in society and these kids aren't being arrested or anything happening, you can't just say we should hurt Pauline, we should kick Pauline, we should whatever, because then it makes it okay to be a normal thing in politics. And it's just like we learned nothing after Charlie got shot. And so I this is obviously very alarming for me. It's a 63-year-old woman. I mean, like, what more could could be more wrong than that? But violence is never okay in this situation.
Yeah, I agree. I'll echo those. And I also think that if we get a moment to make a clip that the man, or not a man, you're a parasite responsible. Like, what a joke! What an embarrassment of a man! What a weak parasite to attack a woman. Full stop. You add a layer that she's 60 because you think you're justified because of some ideology, political stance you have, is unacceptable. And it's typical of the lunatic left, as George spoke about on Sam's podcast. They live in this fantasy where whatever they imagine up is their reality, but it's not grounded in fact. They believe they can use violence to attack people on the other side. It's always one directional. People like to say it's not, but it's always one directional. It's always leftist lunatics coming after people on the right. And I just think it's atrocious. And I just can't believe it's not more in the news more. If anyone knows who this woman is, I would love to get in touch. I'd love to know. I'd love to hear her story. And I'd probably love to help in some way, because as far as I'm concerned, I'd also like to know who the guy is. So if we have any more details come out, I just think we should be told, because it's a terrible story. What a parasite of a human. George, what's your thoughts on political violence, mate? What do you think of this bloke who's done this to this grandma?
Well, it goes to the main point, and I brought up in the podcast just now. I said Conservatives' biggest weakness is they want to be adored by the left. They want to be loved by the left. But the left hates the right. The left, right, especially the ultra-left, let's just talk about the ultra-left or the far left, you want to call them, they are mentally ill and they are spiritually ill. So they are not people of health or prosperity. They are essentially people who should be in mental asylums, most of them, to be honest. And they want to see you in pain. They want to see us hurt. If any of us here were to be hurt or be to hit or to be assassinated, they would be celebrating it. They'd be dancing about it. They would be texting their friends saying, "How what a glorious day that these people."
They have a track record of it. They have a track record of responding to political violence in that way.
Well, we just
of
seen
assassinations.
Once again, we're seeing them celebrate a 6-year-old woman being bashed. I'm telling you, behind the circles, like, forget about media for a second. Just inside the inner circles, these people would be celebrating this.
Absolutely.
Because the thing is, you put a One Nation shirt, you might as well put on a swastika. That's how serious this is with the left. This is how delusional they are. This is how mentally ill they are. These guys, honestly, like, if this was 100, 200 years ago, their heads would be on a spike, because they are not fit for society. They are literally mentally ill individuals who want to go around and hurt what we've built. They want to destroy this country. They want to burn this flag. The fact that we've got people burning this flag is enough to tell you how sick this country truly is. Like, we honestly have a disease in this country, and like, we need to stop being afraid of saying this. Like, the conservatives out there, moderate Australians out there, if you're listening, stop trying to get love from the left. They do not like you. They hate you. They will celebrate your death. It's time to say enough is enough. It's time for men to stand up, tell the feminists to shut the fuck up, right? Honestly, that's the first step. Tell the feminists, shut the fuck up. We've given it a go. It's been 50 years. We gave feminism a go for 50 years. What's happened? You've destroyed society. You destroyed Anglo-Saxon countries. You've destroyed the Commonwealth, right? It's a failed experiment. Let the men take control. Let us get the course back. And then there can be a discussion later about maybe allowing third-wave feminism back. But right now, it's a failed thing. And who gets hurt the most? It's the women who get hurt the most. They can't even compete in sports anymore without a freaking guy with testicles coming on the field and whacking their balls across the face of women. They can't even compete in mathematics, in even being an actress. You've got better male-female actors than you have female actors. Look what happened with The Odyssey. You had Elliot Page supposed to be this warrior. It's an absolute disgrace. And these are all symptoms of mentally ill people who are allowed to vote, who are in society walking around, doing whatever they want, going to whatever bathroom they want. Like, guys, really think about how sick this is, how sick society really is. Like, we have to be honest about it and upfront.
I agree. Hey, Scott, I want to have your...
This is going to get worse. This is going to get worse, by the way. This is the start.
I'll hear your thoughts, Scotty, before we go to the next story. How does it feel, mate? Because you've sat this on. I feel like there's a little bit of steam coming out of your ears when you hear a story of a 6-year-old grandma getting punched and then people burning the flag. Tell me your thoughts before we go to the next story on how the state of that.
Look, it's great rage fate. I noticed the story was August the 17th. It's the 20th of August today. We've had no follow-up. It happened at the Ekka or around the Ekka grounds, one of the most surveilled areas in the Brisbane CBD at the moment. We've got no footage. We've got no follow-up arrests. There's no follow-up story. It makes me angry because we don't want to think about a grandma getting hurt. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that this story doesn't have depth. Okay, we've heard about it. It makes you want to click on it. It makes you want to feel something. You know, keep the ants angry, and there's no more that we know, and that concerns me the most because we've just watched more laws come through federally, more surveillance is rolling out. George is talking about the drones that are potentially following you down the street. We know we're being watched 24/7. Where's the rest of the story? Why don't we know any more about it? And that worries me about what's going on here as well. Because if we're just trying to piss people off, then this is doing the job.
All we know, in addition to that, is really that apparently she was discharged at 2 a.m. So the first thing I thought was, is it a true story? But then I thought, well, if they've gone to the extent to say that she's been discharged at 2 a.m., there's obviously a record of this injury and people saying it happened. So I side with the fact that it happened, and obviously the left have a track record of violence. While we're talking about crazy lefties, you go ahead, Ed. I'm going to bring the next story.
Sorry, mate. I was going to say, well, yeah, that's a good segue, actually. But it's worth for context, where this happened at the Ekka is about 20 minutes from the scene of the murder, the brutal murder of a young man about a month ago, I believe. Or even less in Toowong, which I'm not sure if we'll have the chance to talk about, but there's also scarce details around that. There's been young youths seem to have been of a particular persuasion, but again, there's just very few details that are coming out about this, and it's designed to quell public anger, to quell righteous anger about what's really happening on our streets, what the left are doing in terms of violence, what migrant communities are doing in terms of violence, and it's all designed to placate the population. And it's really quite concerning. And I think it's a symptom of broader issues in our civilization, but particularly our Australian society, where we're just not able to direct our attention and our anger on things that really matter. And we're caught up instead in these stupid media storms or political storms, even stuff like Albanese's comments, which, yes, he's leader of the country. I've criticized those comments in the past, but it's been like 2 or 3 weeks of political debate about Albanese and the melons story. And it's like, this is the sort of stuff that's happening. This is the sort of stuff that is really causing the decline of our civilization. One of the other things that's causing the decline is our complete aversion to talking about abortion. And I wanted to bring up this story, Brodie, because I happen to know Lou O'Brien to some degree well, and I know that he's a good man, and I know that he's copped a lot of criticism from people like Stephen Miles, who you might recall in the lead up to the 2024 election, which was basically a month before, or no, it was 2 weeks before the US presidential election with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. He basically imported the American style of politics around abortion. So basically rallying the entire left wing on your abortion rights. Christopher Foley and his team are going to take away your abortion rights. This is what led to Christopher Foley ultimately leading, a gagging debate, which is insane. And yeah, that's sort of where we're at. But I just wanted to bring this story up because Lou O'Brien's bringing back a bill that had been raised previously, which is the Babies Born Alive. This is failed abortions whereby children are left to die on an operating table. These are children who are formed, who, if given the right care, will live like any other normal baby. And somehow this is controversial. And you had Stephen Miles, I forget the exact post, I might try to pull it up, or Brodie, you can pull up Stephen Miles's post yesterday, talking about, oh, this is yet another LNP man trying to tell women what to do with your bodies. And I must say, one of the most heartening things was going through the comment section of Stephen Miles' own post, and everyone in there saying, what are you talking? Like, that is insane. This is talking about babies who are fully fledged babies outside the womb. And it's otherwise, if you leave them there, they are going to die. They are just going to die on an operating table. So I wanted to commend Lou O'Brien for what he's doing here. And I think it's...
Ed, can you read that, by the way? Can you see that?
Yes.
Read that article quick for the viewer.
Yeah, so Right to Life bill for babies surviving termination, which was left in limbo twice by federal parliament, is being given a third chance to become law. Wide by LNP MP Lou O'Brien is expected to table the Human Rights Child Born Alive Protection Bill in Parliament. This was on Monday, saying he was speaking up for little kids that haven't got a voice of their own. And that's sort of the point that stood out to so many of us when this came up. You had so many political men on the left try to make this a left-right issue yet again, and basically saying, oh, this is a matter of, women being able to choose what to do with their own body. And it's like, you're just failing as a leader. You're failing as a man. If your default to letting children die is, women have got to choose what they've got to choose, you're a pathetic, weak man, and you don't deserve any saying, any credence whatsoever in public life. And Stephen Miles, though he does the TikToks with all the biceps in the gym, and he might give Scotty a good run for his money, I'd still back you in, Scott. What a weak man he is. What a weak man of zero moral fiber, that he would rather throw a little petty political stone of, it's just a man telling women what to do with their body, than examine his conscience for one moment. I mean, look at that baby. That baby's probably a couple weeks or a couple of months older than what they're saying is okay to kill in the womb. It's insane.
Yeah, George, the erosion of society often starts when men start dressing as women. It's shown us in history. This is a repeated pattern. And when we start essentially sacrificing babies, and people who might not want to go down there on a conspiratorial, I'm just going to say it as it is. This is what this is. You're sacrificing babies, and it's very dark. And it's destroying a generation. 70-odd million abortions a year worldwide. I think 80-odd thousand here in Australia. But this is to the point where we're talking about, hey, like he said, just to double down on his comments, this is babies that are born alive, failed terminations, born alive, and people leave them. They leave them. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, well, look, it just goes to show that evil is prevalent throughout society. And, it's a very sad thing. And there's this constant push by the left and yes, weak men, but also this feminist movement, that they have some sort of right to abort children. And it goes back to what I said about the left not living in realism. They live in a moral non-realism place. They live in an imaginary land where they think there's no consequences to abortion, that the kid doesn't feel pain, that there's no economic problem with aborting our own people. So, this is a huge issue. And I'm very lucky I had Dr. Joanna Howe in my studio yesterday. I did an interview with her where we go deeper on these topics, but to be fair, it then led into a almost hour debate around should women be able to vote. So that was a very fascinating chit chat. And I think definitely stay tuned for that, because it's a very fascinating conversation. I'm not saying you have to believe in that, but the point of view is that what has been the consequences of everyone being able to vote? It kind of goes back to that kind of conversation we always talk about. What should be the cutoffs? Who should be able to vote? And going back full circle, we said about social media before. There's even an argument, should people be able to read and write? Because the issue with everyone learning how to read and write is that it creates a scenario where critical thinking gets gone. Because if you couldn't read and write, you could only have your critical thoughts. You only had your pragmatic brain. And that was something that's been lost, because now you can read an article and you're brainwashed, or you read a social media feed, you get brainwashed. So you're kind of reading your own destruction. And there's also talks about this in theology around the ears and the eyes being portals to destruction itself. And that's what you see the pornography industry, things like OnlyFans, things like abortion. These things are basically promoted through the vehicle of being able to read and write and understand things. So yeah, there's a little bit of an interesting conversation that we could all have maybe one day. Should people be able to read and write, or should everyone be able to read and write? And should women even vote? That should be a nice chat we should have one day.
That'll be a great topic. Hey, Joel, have you got any thoughts on this Born Alive bill before we go to the next story?
No, I think Edward said it all.
Okay.
Can't add anything else.
Scotty, anything to add? You guys are happy to go to some cost of living stuff, which is a never-ending cycle?
Quickly on that one, though, Lou O'Brien, right? He's the sitting member for Wide Bay up here in Queensland, federal member, and he will have a very strong One Nation candidate, Katie McCullum, running against him up there. Now, Lou's, by all external measures, a great conservative who could potentially lose his seat in the orange wave that we're going to see unfold across the country. And he won't be the only one. Potentially, we're going to see great conservatives get washed out here as well with Team Orange, mate. So, this is going to be the real shame of what we see happen potentially in Australia, where we say goodbye to some good potential conservatives in government. So.
All right, on to the gift that just keeps on giving, which is Jim Chalmers. This is Ray White has said, which they manage apparently 250,000 rental properties. The heading here is they warn Jim Chalmers' budget tax changes could contribute to rent hikes of almost a third, 30% for those playing at home. Publicly, the Labor obviously publicly rejects those analysis. Scotty, you're in the industry. You're old enough to see how rental market has changed, how the property market has changed. I know you've been, involved in some of the stuff that's been going on when these early budget came out. What do you see? Any surprises here, or are you like, this is pretty much what we expected?
Buckle up for mass homelessness. Buckle up. I mean, we've already seen a collapse in new building approvals. All the trends are heading in the direction that we all forecast was going to happen. And I'll just touch back in April when we did the rally outside Parliament House when I was interviewed by the ABC. I said, you wait till this budget comes out and you watch every single family in this country, every single homeowner, every business owner get screwed. And this is exactly what's happening. Jim Chalmers doesn't know what he's doing. He's a clown. He's surrounded by clowns. They're ideologues. They are not genuine financially literate people, and they are only there to perpetrate the agenda of wiping out small to medium enterprise in Australia and killing aspiration for Australians. The guy doesn't know what he's doing. Now, Ray White, do you think they had any input? They manage over 200,000 properties. They're one of the largest real estate managers and sellers of property in Australia. And they sell 1 in 10 homes in Australia. These guys should have been at the table as part of that conversation, but they weren't. And the peak bodies, are failing at every level. Government doesn't want to know about it. Now, all this is going to do is centralise more power and wealth in the hands of people that have already got it and are able to take advantage of the situation. Let's bring in BlackRock. Let's bring in big superannuation. Let's bring in what's about to own property in Australia. And it won't be, your police officer dad with a nurse wife buying an investment property to try and build out their portfolio for a stable retirement. That's all going to go, mate. All of this is going to be massively owned by big moneyed interests, and this is all a part of that.
Yeah, is the real doomsday if things don't get better and they continue on this trend and get worse? As it stands right now, the way things break down, if you're on an average income and there's two of you working, the price of petrol, the price of groceries, the price of your kid to be in school, you've got a phone bill, one of your kids might play sport and you rent. That scenario, you're in the red every week by a couple $100. So you've got a credit card. 1 month you say, I can't pay the kids' sport. The next month you ring the power bill, you say I have a payment plan. Then you borrow some money of your parents, and it's this vicious cycle. You constantly go on the red. Seems like it's by design. Seems like there's an agenda. What's the end goal if no one can afford to rent? Is it the government coming in saying, guys, we'll just own all the houses, or a BlackRock, and we'll work out a universal income. We'll work out a system that seems like the only way out. That's where it feels like we're going. George, I see you nodding your head. Rip in, please.
No, you're completely correct. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know if these leaders are doing this on purpose. I feel like there's a level of incompetency within Australia's bureaucracy. And I think the self-destruction of Australia's economy, and not just its productivity, but it's also its business diversity and what we actually do as a country, that absolute failure of it all is leading towards, a sort of system where we do have a credit social system, where we have BlackRock stepping in to be the big superhero, we have big pharma, big food, big corp, all stepping in line and creating like almost like a centralized, monopolized system where it's very easy to manage, very easy to survey, and kind of fits the model of what we're seeing get pushed through the government with this legislation, especially with the ASIO bill. And even the budget itself only serves the super industry funds. It was literally a way for them to stop the bleeding, because people were pulling money out of their supers because they realized it's no good. The super is just a big failed system, and people were panicking, pulling the money out, and the budget was like, whoa, slow down, we got to stop this. And they kind of showed their hand here, and it just showed the whole world, and it showed the economic world of Australia that this government and these bureaucracies are there just to serve a small elite few in this finance system. But look, it's been clearly stated, and I've said this before, like Australia's economy is a banking economy. We have some of the biggest banks in the world, and we also just dig up dirt and sell it. So there's not much going for us. I would say this, like Australia is almost like a testing ground for experimental...
I was about to ask you, we are the testing ground, right? Yeah, go there.
Yeah, we're the testing ground. Well, things like pay wave, things like equality in parliament, female politicians, gay rights, LGBTQ, under 16 social media ban. Like Australia and New Zealand are like this perfect population size where you can do things very quickly. The cities are all isolated. Even the ways our laws and legislation have been built, they were built for a time 200 years ago where we didn't have transport and we were all isolated. So it was very easy to control us and make sure that Australians wouldn't revolt. Don't forget, if you look at Australians' history 150 years ago, Australians were quite bombastic. We were very revolutionary. We had many little revolutions within Australia. Like, people say, oh, we were a bunch of convicts. Yeah, we were. But there was also this like kind of free-spirited nature about the older Australia, the old Australian world. And I feel like that's slowly coming back. I guess for us, and I guess the purpose of the Chamber is, can we give enough time for the people of Australia to realise all these issues that we're discussing so they can create plans and have that Phoenix moment? Because look, for example, at the UK. The UK, it's too far gone. The UK has essentially been conquered, and the only way out for the UK now is either a massive reform in government that's like going to happen within the space of a year, or a civil war. And I don't think Australians want civil war here. So we have a unique opportunity with the work that Scott, Joel, Edward, you, Brodie, are doing to kind of get Australia waking up. Because if we don't wake up soon, I say we've got 10 years to wake up. So,
while we're on this topic, and I'll hear from you, Scotty, first, just from unlocking our potential, and then some thoughts from you, Joel. This idea, right, about compulsory superannuation, we haven't really discussed that sort of things on the Chamber before. We've talked about the previous budget and how it's propping up like the AI bubble and stuff, our super, like it's really out of our hands. But the idea of compulsory super, it'd be good even just for the audience to sort of chime in the comment section too. Would they like to pull their money out early? Would it be a benefit? Scotty, do you think if you could pull your super out, let's say we can't just stop paying it, but if we can have early access to it now to say buy your first home, do you see that as a benefit? Or is that going to jump prices? Have you thought about this stuff much?
I'm constantly thinking about it because, I've got my own retirement inbound sooner than you boys have, obviously, and I pay the super bill for my employees. And I'm also, the history guy here. I remember when super first rolled out and 2% was the contribution, and now where are we at? We're at 12. And in a cost of living crisis, 12% of your income is going to a fund that's being used to fuel ideological interests around the world, country, AI bubble, as George clearly articulated before previously in the US. And Jared Rennick has explained it really well. Whoever controls $3 trillion controls the country. Let's be clear about that. That's bigger than our GDP.
$4.5 trillion now.
$4.5 trillion. It's huge. And so, look, in my opinion, the Labor government gave all low-income earners the lowest income earners a pay rise at our expense, as a business owner's expense. They didn't cut, marginal tax rates or increase the tax-free threshold or reduce the amount of superannuation being paid. No, they didn't, because the super fund managers are collecting $50 billion a year, managing that trillion, those multi-trillions. The whole thing is being rorted. Nothing works effectively anymore. Compulsory superannuation needs to end, and we need to phase this out as quickly as possible. Australians need access to their money before the massive corporates and the AI bubble eat their savings alive, mate, which is about to happen.
And just on that, it's not just that we need early access to the money. This is our money that should be used to empower the nation of Australia. We have trillions of dollars sitting there that could be deployed to build infrastructure, to build a high-speed rail, to terraform Australia, to build more cities. Australia should have more cities. America has 50-something states. Australia should have more states. And Joel has talked about this before. What's one way we can help politics in Australia? More states. Joel has said this quite clearly in the past. More states would benefit Australia because you give more voices to regional areas and it's less decentralization. Australia needs to think about more states, more cities, unlocking that $4.5 trillion of super and building a better future for all Australians. It's not that hard.
Joel, let's play that game. What would it look like? People at home might not have heard that before, but more states, how would that even look and why is that a benefit?
Well, if you're in a postcode where you think that you guys should be your own state, I think that, obviously there's going to be parameters. We don't want a state for every suburb as a locality. But let's say, all of those postcodes that are west of the Great Dividing Range in New South Wales, there is an idea for a riverina state with the rural part of Victoria joining with some of the rural parts of New South Wales to the west, to the southwest corner of New South Wales. They get a disproportionate amount of representation federally. They're underrepresented from the city in Sydney. It's much like Queensland, how you could probably get another state out of Queensland in the north, or even another 2 states out of Queensland in the north, because the southeast is dominating us so much with population. Now, why would you do that? I think you need to poll these areas and ask, hey, do you want to form your own state? And these are obviously, you'd have to have your own parliament and your own premier and all of that crap. But if you search the Riverina state idea, it might come up with the map. But I think that's the best way to do it. The Electoral Commission should be able to be requested by these communities to be able to do this. If a petition gets enough signatures,
the Constitution allows for it, Joel. It's allowed to happen, and it's purely at referendum, mate. It's about votes. You get enough people to vote for it, but who's got the courage to run this thing up?
Well, that's the problem. The problem is it's got to be triggered by the Parliament of the major cities, which is already stacked. So that's the part of the problem. So you don't have citizen-initiated referendums, and that's why it's my number one thing I request. But if you can do that, why would you do that? And the real reason for that is in these areas, well, I mean, we could be depleting them of their resources for the benefit of the city. It ends up becoming a mob rule, which we don't want. We actually want to have a strong country where sovereignty is respected. And so, look, this would actually help make the country a lot more conservative. And this is kind of how it used to be in the past. In the past, a lot of these areas did have a disproportionate amount of power because a lot of these areas were owned by the wealthiest Australians when Australia was founded. But yeah, look, I think that would bring a lot more balance to the nation. And if we had that, I think Australia would be a much better place. I mean, if you look at the size of the landmass, Australia is 2/3 the size of the US. The US has 50 states and we've got 6. I mean, we should at least have, maybe 20 different states. But look, maybe we could split New South Wales in half. We could split Queensland in 3 parts. Could take a look at WA. But we need more localized politics. That's what needs to happen. We need better representation at a federal level so we're not, ruining these communities that feel like they don't have a voice.
And just to add to what Joel's speaking of, another fantastic reason to have more states and to have more cities is for example, when you have a state, every state needs a major city. So what that does is it incentivizes big businesses that are all centralized within Melbourne and Sydney to move out into a different city. And that creates life, that creates prosperity in a new area. So for example, instead of Amazon, Google, all these companies going to Melbourne and Sydney every single time, you have a Google go to some random town in the middle of nowhere, Victoria, starting a whole new city. That brings life in, it brings people in, it brings those people who want to start a new whole chapter of their life and build something more greater. And that's why America was so prosperous, because you had all these different states and all these companies, all these factories, all this infrastructure, all these departments would open up shop in these different little city areas, different little states, and it would see prosperity. And we all look back at the 60s and 50s. I'm not sure. I'm watching Smallville at the moment, which is a great TV show from the early 2000s, where, Smallville was this little city where Lex Luthor comes and brings a whole plant over and builds all these businesses, and like you're looking at this like beautiful little town in the middle of America that's thriving, it's bustling, it's got character, and we don't have any of that in Australia. You go out to the rural areas of Australia, especially here in South Australia, it's depressing. What do you see? Meth addictions, rubbish, ghost towns, businesses struggling, farmers complaining. It's a sad state out in the regions. The regions are really suffering, guys. It's depressing.
Go ahead, Joel.
Guys, sorry, I've got to run, so just give me a bit of rope here. But first off, what led me down this path was the fact during COVID, the Achilles heel of breaking the lockdowns around Australia was you just needed one state. You just needed one leader of one state to break the deadlock, because if you have multiple states, you have a free market of states. So you could have lower taxes on property. You could have lower rates for even at a local level, because you can legislate at the state level. You could have a more tax opportune situation. And if people have two votes in this country, a lot of people think they only have one. They have two votes. They have the vote with their feet. And this is what we saw in the US. You had California, a lot of people leaving California, a lot of people leaving New York because of the COVID measures, and they're all going to Florida. And Florida wasn't doing a lot of the lockdown measures after the first round of lockdowns. And so that's made it an enormously attractive place for policemen that were losing their jobs because of the jab mandates and whatever. They were getting bonuses in Florida. So that's how you attract people. That's actually how a good immigration policy works at a federal level. But at a state level, that competition is what's needed. Because at the moment, what they did during COVID was Scott Morrison set up a national cabinet, which is crap. It's basically him and all the premiers of the state to make sure they're all in deadlock so they don't do that. But what we needed one spear thrower, one, in Arabic we say one hamwan, one leader just to step up and actually say, no, you know what, screw you guys. I want to basically make it more of a free market. I want everyone to come to us. Now, look, Queensland's the natural candidate for that, and we kind of saw that. Over COVID, over 200,000 people moved north from New South Wales and Victoria because of the lockdowns in the first 2 years. And that's kind of why there's a lot of problems going on up there. But if you can do it in a positive way, and actually a managed way and create competition between the states, it can go better. But look, last thing I'll say, because I've got to hop off as soon as I finish this sentence, when it comes to the superannuation stuff, Jim Chalmers did say that the next election will be a referendum on superannuation. And now look, under that post on Facebook, it was getting ratioed. There were more comments than there were likes. And so I decided to weigh in to tip it over the barrier on Facebook, because we got like 350,000 followers there. I said, I think it's questionable the relationship Labor has with many super funds. And some geniuses in the comments proceeded to list all the former Labor high up members that are now chairmen of the different super boards. One person wrote Wayne Swan, chair of CBUS, former federal Labor treasurer. Another person wrote Nicola Roxon, chair of HESTA, former federal Labor attorney. James Merlino, chair of Rest Super, former Victorian Labor deputy premier. Greg Combet, chair of the Future Fund, former federal Labor minister. And look, there is an unholy alliance between the unions, and that's I think superannuation should be voluntary. I think the idea that we don't have 10% of our money is criminal. It's ridiculous. And let's not forget that politicians, they get paid a higher percentage for super as well. But guys, I've got to love you. I've got to leave you. I've got to run. Thank you so much. And I'll definitely see you guys next week.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks,
See you,
Joel.
mate.
Ed,
It's almost like
where will Sally McManus end up? Which super fund will she end up at, mate?
Exactly. Well, my tip is probably CBUS, but it might be Australian Retirement Trust. But this is exactly right. Now, I was having an argument with one of my mates who's deeply conservative on everything else, and he was like, "No, you're an idiot. You're wrong on this. Australia Super's the best thing. Like, people can't be trusted to keep money for retirement." I understand the principle of it. We've got to look at the practice of it over the last 35 years. If you had that principle in the 90s, and you were like, no, we need to sort of mandate a bit of this because people are just not saving up for super and it's going to be a bigger cost, I could have understood that. But right now, if you're looking at this particularly from a conservative perspective, the absolute weapon that it has become, $4 trillion in wealth controlled by these super funds, invested into the ESG, invested into all of these different agendas, profiting, again, it's just creating another ruling class. It's creating another subsection, I suppose, where whereby the working class can be ripped off and people at the top are making an absolute mosh out of it. So whatever the principle of it now it's like, well, what's the solution then to people who are not saving? Is it just a matter of, they'll just have to suffer then? I'm not going to profess to have the answers on this, because it's clearly not working now. It's clearly not working now, and it's being used as a weapon against the working class. It's being used as a weapon from the hard left.
It hasn't reduced the amount of people that are retiring and still taking the pension. The percentage hasn't changed. And all it's doing now is that people are taking their super and paying out their mortgage, whereas previously they would have paid out their mortgage before they retired. And so it has played a significant part in the, acceleration of house prices and back profits in Australia. That's what it's done. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. This was part of that.
I'll go a little deeper, and I reckon George is going to jump in the back of this, but I also believe that the reason people think we need superannuation in this country is because we're not promoting the family unit. I'm not going to need my super because I'm going to raise great kids who are going to go into business. They're going to be little capitalists, little conservatives, and they're going to look after me when I'm older. And my super is going to go on a boat or a car that I don't need. I'm going to blow it. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to take my wife on holidays. But we are killing a generation, and we're not raising families where other parts of the world where they have this community and their families actually all do life together, and the nonna and the grandparents are there and people are looking after the grandparents. We don't cherish that here. We actually don't cherish it. I don't know what it is, if it's just a lack of culture in our country. I'm not sure what it is. But when you go across Europe and different parts of the world, you see family units. It means something, and they look after one another. We're kind of raising kids right now who don't want to get a job because they're being faced with an option to have universal income. So super seems great to them because, we'll just take money now and eventually it won't be their money anyway. So there's just another level to it. Feels all by design.
Just out of curiosity, has anyone had to tap into their super in an emergency before?
No, I was trying to.
People who have.
I was trying to use it. Yep. Yeah, you go, Scotty.
Well, I just wanted to an example. 15 years ago, I was in a significant financial duress situation and wanted to take $10,000 of my own super out. Now, I managed to get through the hurdles to get the 10K out. I paid 30% on it on coming out, so I ended up with $7,000. I used that money to deal with the financial situation that I was in at the time. And that $7,000 actually bumped me up into the next tax bracket that year as well. And then I ended up with a $3,000 tax bill. So out of the 10K, I literally walked away with $4,000, mate. So,
criminal.
Yeah. And
that's criminal.
And there's no real utility either. I know another number of governments have basically talked about the Super Saver scheme and the, the ability for new homeowners to withdraw out of it. But you're only able to withdraw out that which you've put in on top. So it's not like if you're, if you get to 30 years old and you're trying to buy a house and you've got, 30, 40, $50,000 worth of super, you can't access any of that if you've just been paying, if it's just been coming out of your pay as normal. It's excess things. And again, who is able to put in extra money to super that they cannot get? It is the rich. Yep. It is the people who have made these rules. It is the people that have made these laws that benefit off it, that can do with less of that money in the meantime. But when you're looking around at the housing crisis, goodness me, I've got, some of that money sitting there and I just can't access it until I'm 60 years old and, there's no real point anyway. It's just
you'll be in prison. You'll be in prison anyway under an ASIO bill, Edward, so it won't matter.
Long before 60.
Yeah. Go ahead, George.
Well, no, it just goes to show that what is the super, right? I don't initially have an issue with super in its most proto meaning. But the super, what is it? It's a way for the US government and the US economy to control Australia. The Australian super fund, all of it, props up a huge part of the US economy because we are using all our capital to keep the economy of the US afloat by buying into it constantly, by investing into their companies constantly. Remember, this is a huge sum of money. So Australia is like a huge safety net for the US economy. And it just goes to show, are the banks serving the people of Australia? Are they serving the United States of America? And the reality is, it looks like the super is there to serve the United States of Australia. And when I see figures like Julian Assange come out and say, if you want change in Australia, you don't go to Canberra, you go to DC. And he kind of had a point, because what is Australia? Australia is just a sibling, almost proxy state to the US now. That's all it really is. Every policy we do, every financial move we make is only there to benefit America. And I get it. The argument is, well, look, without America, Indonesia will take over. You got 120 Muslims above us. You got the Chinese. You got Singapore. You got Malaysia. But another thing people haven't really considered is if Australia did nuclearize itself officially, and it was very well known to the world that Australia has nukes, right? We do have our own security, that you can't really mess with us. And if we did have a plan, hey, China, you come and do anything dodgy, we'll just set these nukes off, too bad, too sad, then we'll gain some sort of respect for this nation. And you know what that opens up doorways for? Why don't we have trade agreements with Indonesia? Why don't we have trade agreements with China? You know, Australia could become a mega nation where we produce a substantial amount of stuff. We have all the resources, we could refine it all here, and then we could create our own cars, planes, drones, whatever we want to create. We could do anything. That's the level of resource we have. We have trillions of dollars worth of resources sitting here, and that's the sad reality of it all. We just dig it up, we wash it, we send it off. We need to dig it up, wash it, put it into a refinery, put it into a factory, give people jobs, build things that we can be proud of. A big part of why people in Australia aren't proud is because we're not building anything we can be proud of again. And you know, when Henry Hastie was doing that fantastic work back in the day before he cucked out, maybe that's my cuck of the week, he was talking about the pride we had for our cars. Like Australia was renowned for building some of the best cars in the world. Like we were revolutionary in the car industry. So like there is that spirit in Australia where you do have these capabilities, and it's just sad to see this $4 trillion being utilized as some sort of floating bag for the US economy. And yeah, we need to maybe, you know, a few things that happen. Create more states, create more cities, unlock the super, get the super invested into our own country, create defense that allows Australia to go, enough is enough, we can protect ourselves, and we have a nuclear option if we need it, just like North Korea does, just like the US does, just like Israel does. And then we can open up trade agreements with all these massive economies. Like, don't forget, Indonesia is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. China is a huge economy. India is a huge economy. And we're missing out on all these opportunities because we're cucked. We're cucked by the US government. And it's kind of quite sad. So, I mean, look,
there's going back to your friend, Ed, too, just that thought of telling people that you don't know how to make good choices. My first stance with government involvement is I believe that we should do everything we can to help the vulnerable, the sick, the widows, all those things, right? And our elderly. But I think just telling people you're not going to know how to save or look after yourself doesn't make them better people. It's an excuse to kind of take money. We'll do what we want with it. It's just an overreach of government that seems to have passed through the cracks. What's your guys' thoughts on that? Because that's what super is. Super is, obviously they use it for their own benefit, propping up the AI bubble, stuff like that in America and all that as well. But the idea that, we'll tell you how to create your retirement because we don't think you know how to do it. And I just don't think that's the answer. I don't think you create great people when you do that. I think the onus should be, hey, there's nothing to save you when you get old. So either have a family unit that look after each other, invest, make something of yourself. What's your thoughts on that, Scotty?
Well, New Zealand had a referendum to introduce super, and it was, massively rejected. If you had a referendum on it today, it would not win. And it was introduced at 2%. We're getting closer to 12 now. I mean, imagine if they turned around to you today and said, listen, we need you to voluntarily give over 12% of your income. You'd have a freaking riots in the street, mate. People would be burning petrol stations as well as MPs' offices. It wouldn't jive. But it's been, the frog in the boiling pot, mate, piece by piece. And here we are. You have no financial independence. You're living below the poverty line. You have a cost of living crisis, but 12% of your income's going to a fund manager you'll never meet who's getting paid really, really well, driving an AMG Mercedes and getting huge bonuses every year. That's the reality of it.
Ed, final story, mate. Give us an update, but also for the people who don't know, give us a quick rundown of what happened last week and where we're at today, and then we'll wrap up.
Guys, before Ed, sorry, Ed, I don't want to interrupt, but I need to go. My lovely wife is here to pick me up, so I got to say goodbye to everyone. But thank you so much for today, and I'll see you guys next week.
See you, George. Thank you, mate. Go ahead,
Ed.
Guys.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it. So basically last week on Wednesday, the Ben Carroll government in Victoria announced that they're shutting down the red unions, or going to try to. We flew down as soon as we heard about that. It's this bill called the Associations and Corporation Reform Amendment Bill. Sounds very innocuous, but in it, they pledge to shut Red Union down, a group of alternative unions that aren't affiliated with the Labor Party. of which I work for. And essentially, we flew down immediately. We were able to, with the help of Joel Jammal and a number of others at Turning Point, we were able to delay the bill, get a large amount of work done to delay that. But it's set to be debated next week now. So it's set to be debated on the 27th. 26th, Wednesday, 26th of August. So 6 days time. Right. So I'm heading back down there on Monday. And essentially we're trying to make sure that we can lobby the crossbench and the opposition. It's looking very favourable at this point in time. People see this for what it is. It's Labor shutting down independent unions that don't donate to them 3 months out from an election. We say that we are apolitical in the sense that we will never provide money to any political party. And the Labor Party hate that. We're taking money away from their left-wing campaigning infrastructure with the unions. And the Victoria Trades Hall, which is the peak union body in Victoria, have come out with a one-word response saying good to this change. So it's definitely come at the behest of them, but we're very confident that we can kill this bill. So we've launched a bit of a campaign. You can see the page there, and might be able to link it in the video as well, Brodie. You'll be able to see it on my social media. But we're really trying to ramp up and make sure that we can kill this bill when it comes to the upper house, which the lower house debate is set to start next week, but the upper house might be as soon as next week as well. So we're prepared for everything, but this will have pretty big ramifications. It's basically the Labor government saying, no workers, you don't get to choose which union you want to join. We're going to mandate that you join ours. Otherwise, we're going to shut you down and you can have no protection at all.
And I'll just reiterate here what it says on the page. If you're wondering at home, why would I care? Well, the first thing is you've got to have competition in the market. If you get rid of all the unions, you've only got one or two unions who politically align a certain way. That's not good for anyone. If you're asking, how can I help, right here on the page now, email your MP is one way. Send this page to all your colleagues is another way. Read the bill for yourself so you understand it. Talk about it at the pub with your friends. And join a red union, associate is another way. Anything to add, Scotty, before we say goodbye to the viewers?
Well done, Ed. Great work, mate. You know, honestly, you inspire me with your energy and what you're doing to help, you know, try and create real choiceful workers and real protections, because we know that it's been monopolised. It's a rort, it's a racket, mate. And you're an inspiration to us all. Well done. Keep hammering.
Good on you, lads.
Well,
thanks for making it. We're just one by one dropping off then. I almost want to say, listen, I've got to go too. Someone else can close it out, but I won't. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, guys. As always, if you haven't subscribed, do it now. It's free. Just subscribe. How do I do that? Well, mate, create an account. Go to a Gmail, create an account, create a YouTube account, press subscribe. It helps us. Thanks for watching. Until next time. See you, boys.